The purpose of Wealth Talk is to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain you on the subject of building your wealth. WealthBuilders recommends you should always take independent financial, tax, or legal advice before making any decisions around your finances.
Welcome to episode 52 of Wealth Talk. My name's Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for WealthBuilders, and I'm joined today by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Chris. It's been interesting times for all, and I'm sure everybody's completely fed up to the back teeth with what's going on with the coronavirus. However, it's a new reality, so good to have the opportunity to try and break through some of the headlines. I guess if you tune into the headlines, you can be very fearful. And what I thought would be really useful is to try and dispel the fear and know that we're going to get through this, because we always do. And so it's best to be thinking about being proactive rather than reactive. There's a whole bunch of reactions out there right now, as you can see, Chris. So that proactivity, choosing a response, is the key to being smart in troubled times like now.
Absolutely. Yeah, we understand there's millions of Brits at the moment who are worried about their health, worried about their families, and just uncertain about the next few months, even the next couple of years even. So certainly some of those worries are around money and finances. And within our community, within the WealthBuilders Facebook group, we've had a number of questions and people sharing, commenting, and we wanted to address some of those last week. So we recorded a Facebook Live, and that went out a couple of days ago. And we thought we'd do something a little bit different for today's episode and replay that, because it was just under an hour. And we went through all of the 7 pillars, didn't we, Kevin? And we looked at what are some of the maybe overreactions that some people might make, the snap decisions, and some of the common mistakes, and put people's minds at rest, hopefully, with a few wise words.
Yeah, and because it's a replay of something that was done live, it's obviously going to look and feel, or sound rather, a little different to normal, because I think, Chris, you've probably mentioned a few people who are asking questions and so on. So it will feel different, but hopefully see through the normal routine, because let's face it, everyone, we're going to have to change our routine forever. And that's a big part of something to think about, actually, Chris, about changing and thinking about changing our routine, because everything's different. We've got opportunities in that routine to be thinking about time and getting some of that precious time back to do some things that we've been putting off, or to invest some time in education. And we'll do our best to bring as much education as possible, and to choose and take time to carefully consider the response you want to make. And I plead you to do one thing, if nothing else, in times like now. Don't let this happen again, in terms of it making you scared. Because if you can build your wealth, use the opportunity to build your wealth, then anything that comes at you in the future, you'll be able to deal with it, at least financially. And the financial health of the economy and of people is just as important as the physical health, because if the economy goes down, people become unhealthy in a whole new different virus, and it's the virus of the mind, Chris. And this is the problem, I think. It's affecting so many people. Headlines every single hour on the news. And I would say one of the routines to get into is just tune into the news once a day. Don't really be at the mercy of the next thought about how escalating this is. Just change your routine, get a new routine, and listen to the news once a day, and plug into some positive things, so you can take the time that you've got, hopefully, and choose a wise, sensible, and wealth-building response.
And just before we go into the replay, we are towards the end of March. Next week is the 7 Steps to Wealth launch, which we've been planning for a long time, Kevin, and we've had, obviously, some people asking us about this, and has the plan changed in any way? We've decided to continue with the launch, and our reasons for that are that there's never really been a better time for people to start thinking about the long term now, as you rightly said just now, so that this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I mean, I say in the live there'll be opportunities, and there will be. And I think everybody who's a regular listener to this, Chris, will know and trust our integrity. And we certainly had the launch of the 7 steps, which is really the sharpening, the honing, all of the good work that we did in foundation, and really tried to make that more accessible and more available to lots more people. And I see no reason to change that plan, because in fact, we want more and more people to be financially well established, to be moving through, from security to independence in the coming few years, so that when these things happen, which they do periodically, I'm a bit older than most people listening, I guess, Chris. And although I talk in the live about even going back further in history and lots of experiences of plagues and other things, but, I've seen the crash of obviously 2008, which was a big one. I've seen, the big interest rate hike in the 80s, when I remember I had a mortgage at that time, and I remember paying 15.4% on my mortgage, and almost all the money I was earning at that time was going to pay a mortgage, and so these things happen, and we must recognize that they do happen, and you choose a response to deal with it. You don't react to it, and then you move on. And there's always a new horizon to follow, and there's always something to look forward to. And I think we know that wealth building and being independently wealthy is an important step, an important outcome for everybody. I see no reason why, we shouldn't do anything about, maintaining our current plan to help people enroll into that. And while there might be, and I guess, Chris, some people will react negatively, and we might get less than we thought, but that doesn't matter, because the more people we can teach, the better it is. So if it's less than we thought, that's good. Then we can give them more attention, and that's fine. And then the next intake, and then the next intake. This is a continuous plan, Chris. It's not something we're going to stop.
No, absolutely. No, the vision is very clear to help 50,000 people to achieve financial independence. And we are on those first steps now. Our founders last year have, got that momentum now. We're seeing some amazing successes with them, some of them who shared a few weeks ago on the podcast. And if anyone is interested, then the competition we've been running for the last month or so will come to a close this Friday. So the opportunity to win a free place on the 7 Steps to Wealth program for the next 12 months will end on Friday. And if you want to enter, then head over to www.wealthbuilders.co.uk/competition.
And I'd say one thing, we've all got more time. If you're listening to this, take 2 minutes. 2 minutes to save you $2,000. Why the hell wouldn't you do that? And by the way, Chris, I just had a thought, and I'm often a bit free ranging. I think it might be worthwhile, as I reflect on the fact that when we all have a bit more time, one of the things we can do is really focus on eliminating wastage as well. I'm wondering whether, in addition to debits, I think we can relaunch the debits video. I think you've already published it, but can we give other people a link to that in case they've not heard about the debits, if they've not taken time to reduce their debt, the costs of education, bills, insurance, tax, and support costs, all covered in debits, creating money out of thin air. And that's a great thing to do. But also, it might be worth, Chris, reaching into our foundation members just to say, what did you do in your debits? Because they all saved an average of between £800,000. What did they specifically do? And then see if they can give something back to the new intake, if you like, to help them find something more quickly rather than being on a journey of self-discovery.
Sounds like a great idea. Absolutely.
And I think they'd love to do it. I think if the foundation members thought they'd be helping new members, I think they'd be absolutely up for it. And that's a response that, I would expect from the Wealth Builder community rather than the selfishness that I've seen. And, it's another one of those things, Chris, that makes my blood boil, which things do regularly, don't they? When people are selfish and profiteering, I just don't like it.
Indeed. Well, I'll make sure that all of the links to those things we've just discussed are in today's show notes for easy access to everyone listening. But let's head on over to our replay of the Q&A session from last week.
Feels like we're doing a podcast, Chris.
It's a bit like a podcast, but a video version today. And just being present, of course, for everyone in this time of coming together. We're really seeing that community spirit, aren't we, at the moment, Kevin?
I think we're seeing two things, really. We've seen some disappointment We've definitely seen the weeds of self-interest and profiteering. We've seen that around. And I'm glad to say that's being squashed. And not a good thing to see, is it, when people are just not behaving well? And with integrity and ethics, the spirit of our community is, we're seeing that blooming out now.
Yeah.
And people helping each other, people really looking to try and help people who are in difficult times. Because it is difficult times. So we're not going to try and say there's a panacea here. There isn't. There's a pandemic. And when you get a pandemic, everybody's going to be affected. And that effect is affecting, showing itself in different ways. It was interesting. I had a text this morning from one of my clients who said, well, as I've been working with you guys now for, well over a year, I've sorted myself, I've worked out my pension, I've done all these good things. And now I'm actually feeling quite unfazed, not relaxed, not like, I'm wonderfully enjoying any of this, absolutely not, but feeling unfazed. So the kind of connection, I would say, is the whole point of the whole Wealth Builder principles and the journey is so that you can be unfazed by these things. I mean, in fact, the whole concept of Wealth Builders was born out of the adversity 10 years ago in the credit crunch, when we saw the devastation of the stock market. And I realized how poorly, as a financial professional, the market was serving people, and was determined to bring a different solution. Now, 10 years later, that solution is now out. People are signing up to that and loving what it's doing for their life. But many people, perhaps watching now, maybe haven't taken that step yet. So we're going to have to go through the thought process of what do they do now? How do you choose the right response now? Definitely not reacting. Reacting is the wrong response.
Yeah.
But taking time to choose a response, and what we could probably do is help people choose some responses that will be good for them, as opposed to reactions that will be bad for them, because that's really important. But just get into the mindset that if 10 years ago, well, that's longer than that, wasn't it really, but 2008, the whole concept was born out of adversity. We've got another piece of adversity now, and who knows when the next one will be. I mean, this pandemic, if the kind of health professionals, the experts, have us believe it, Chris, it's not going to go away. It goes away and then it comes back, and then it goes away and it comes back. It's almost like waves of this. And so therefore, this could be with us for a very long time, and we could have a new reality. So you've got to be thinking now and be calm, take time, reflect, press reset, take stock of all the things you've got in your life where you can add value. We'll talk about some of those, I guess. And get ready so that if the next one happens in 2030, you could be sending a text to say, I'm completely unfazed. I'm completely financially independent. I've got multiple streams of income flowing in from multiple pillars. And no matter what happens, financially, I'm safe. And my family are financially safe. Because as well as this physical health issue, there's a huge financial health issue here. So many people, so many businesses, when the government says, in a TV announcement, don't go to pubs, don't go to clubs, don't go to restaurants, this is damaging, financially for so many different individuals and businesses, large and small. And the financial repercussions have yet to play out across all of the different pillars, including property people who've got tenants and businesses that are trading and trying to build their recurring income in their business, but they don't have it yet. So it's just going to be affecting everybody. So if we're all affected by it, it's great to be sharing ideas together and watch that community spirit grow, and not profiteering, not self-promotion. This is not about promoting anything. This is just saying, well, let's listen to what people are feeling, what kind of reactions they're thinking, and see whether those we can help them choose maybe a better response, or a slightly different response, or a slightly different perspective on the situation that would help.
Yeah.
Is that a useful start?
Yeah. Should we just dive into one question? And then perhaps it'd be good actually if we could go through the 7 pillars and maybe look at what are some of those overreactions that some people might make now and try and, balance things out for people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there one you want to start, or should we just go through all 7?
Should we take a question first, or do you want to?
Go with the question.
Well, go with the question because Andy Quinn, you've posted a question, so we'll just address this one quickly. And this is really around pension pillar, and a lot of people have been asking this question.
There's probably an overlap of pensions and investments because, for the most part, the pension pillar number 2 and investment pillar number 3 are really predominantly invested in the stock market. So, the stock market, look, we had a 40% drop in the stock market in 2008. We've had give or take, a 30-odd% drop in the stock market now, and understandably, people feel like they're taking a big hit. But the thing to remember about stock market is, number one, it's a valuation at a snapshot point in time. So you don't crystallize any real, tangible, physical loss unless you cash out of the market. And there are different ways that you can engage with the market so you don't cash out. One of those is, particularly if the question was related to moving the money into a different pension, like a SSAS, for example.
Getting ready to transfer, and obviously the funds have dropped in that time.
That's a question we've had probably 20 times, 30 times now in the last week. So I think Paul Brooks and I did an episode on this, but I'll kind of cover a couple of those things. So one of those is to recognize that when you've got money in the stock market, it's actually quite liquid. So, you can sell out at any time. But also, what you can also do is kind of port it. So you can take the money, in one place, and then you can just drop it into another pension. So lift it and drop it, which we call an in-specie transfer. So wherever it's possible, it's not always possible, we can check it for you, but where it's possible, you can just simply take the money where it is now in some kind of funds, tracker funds or whatever, and then move it into wherever you want to move it. Typically, that would be likely in our community into SSAS, because SSAS gives incredible power and flexibility. So people will do that. And then you have got your money doing exactly where it is. So you're on a par, your money's in the market, and then you can reset and think, well, what do I go from here? Mm-hmm. So nobody creates a SSAS to hold exactly the same stocks. If I asked a question of 1,000 of our SSAS trustees and said, when you bought a SSAS, when you created the SSAS to be the owner of that, what do you want to do with the money? And not one person, has said, I'm just go back and buy the exact same stocks.
There would be no point.
There'd be no point in having one. So recognize it's your intention not to be in the same place. Because if you think about the stock market generally, if it has this sort of crashing boom every period of time, however long that period is. So let's pretend, for the sake of an argument, is every 10 years. Why would you put yourself in harm's way every decade, and pay fees for the privilege of doing that? You wouldn't. It's not a way to build wealth because there's no cash flow. It's a way to diversify your wealth once you built it. It's not really the best way to build it unless you're doing it right from the start. And the reason why you do it from the start is because you can buy into the market every single month, and therefore you're buying in on the ups and the downs. So when prices go down and you're buying regularly, you're buying units at the time when the market's low, so that when they go up again, you're carrying forward all of that money across. Now, if you're at a point where you're not doing that, you've made the decision to do a SSAS, for example, then the in-specie is an option. And then take stock, reset, and go, right, what am I going to do? So you had an idea, you had an opportunity in mind. Well, what was it? What was the ROI on that opportunity? And let's say, typical average SSAS client's got 400K, give or take, right? So let's pretend it's 400K. If your money's been hit and it's gone down by 30, 40%, so say you've got 150, for the sake of an argument, you've lost 50 grand, you go, oh, woe is me, the world is crashing. Okay, but you can, in specie, move your 150, it's now in your SSAS, but you've got an opportunity. What's the opportunity? If the opportunity was, to invest in a commercial property that costs you 100 grand, and then you could get leverage on that, so you've got another 50 grand of leverage, you're bringing leverage into play where you can't bring it into play in the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got an opportunity to grow something, and if that growth will not have the same volatility, if that growth will give you a yield which is higher than you'd expect year on year in the stock market, then you're going to make yourself better off in the long term. And you don't have to crystallize all of that money. You just take the minimum amount plus the leverage and leave the rest in the stock market if you need it to carry on, with the hope it will grow. But in the end, it may not. We could be depressed for a very long period of time. Now, we know the government's trying to put many measures in to stimulate the economy. Lots of good things happening, with helping businesses and so on. Interest rates have gone down. Good news if you're a borrower, bad news if you're a saver. So, there's opportunity in both ways. And again, you don't get wealthy by saving money at 0.1%. You get wealthy by making your money work. So in adversity, there are always opportunities. And you just got to choose the response you make, not react to it.
Mm.
And definitely don't stop, because if you stop and say, well, I'll just leave my money where it is and I'll go back to what I'm doing, guess what? You'll stop thinking. You won't be moving forward. And wealth building is about moving and making some momentum changes, saying yes to something, moving forward. Say yes to something else, move forward. And you keep moving forward. And that process of moving is personally, financially, and all of the other ROIs. We just did a podcast on all the ROIs yesterday.
Yeah.
All 11 ROIs are actually touched by the fact that you're making progress. So you have to keep moving. And even if you stop and reset, nothing wrong with that, as long as the intention is to move at some point.
Yeah. And again, that's example in the wheels, isn't it? It's continually learning, improving, building wealth that way.
Yeah, and nothing wrong with stopping, as long as it's not a halt.
Mm-hmm.
It's just every journey. If you just think about it in the vehicle, you're going to stop, aren't you? Red light.
Yeah.
Okay, stop, but don't go backwards to where you came before. Otherwise, you're not moving.
Yeah.
I hope that answers the first question.
For Andy, yeah, hopefully it does, Andy. If there's anything else, drop a message. A few other questions I can see coming in. So we'll try and address these as perhaps we move through the pillars. We obviously talk about the 7 pillars of wealth. Those of you that follow the podcast, you'll understand. And pillar number 1 is your home capacity. What are some of the concerns or mistakes that people might be having at the moment, or opportunities? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so obviously, look, when we've had a number of our students and members have used their home as a source of taking a spare room and using that money to generate an income, 7.5 grand a year tax-free, useful. You might not want to do that right now because you want to socially disengage, and that's fine. But if you've got a period of time to stop, you could look at your home and say, well, okay, what can I do with my home now that I could increase its capacity in the future? So I just mentioned mortgage rates have gone down.
Mm-hmm.
So what if your mortgage has gone down in cost? And what could you do? Well, you could actually focus on, if you don't want to focus on the stock market or you're not ready to build your wealth in other pillars yet, you could focus on eliminating the mortgage, reducing the mortgage by paying what you're paying now or increasing your payment so that your mortgage goes down. So you're building your equity. So you're getting ready for another opportunity in the future if no opportunity presents itself right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You could think about, well, I like the idea of the rental room thing, but I don't actually like the idea of somebody being in my house. Is it possible to create an extension? Is it possible to re-equip your home so you can work more from home? So this process of the, not quite isolation, but it could get to that. More and more people are beginning to see themselves kind of creating even their work environment. I mean, one of my clients the other day said, look, I used to commute 2 hours a day. Now I'm working from home. I've got 2 hours spare every single day. So what can you do with that capacity? Is it time to get more education? Is it time to build more relationships and get used to technology that maybe you're not used to? So there's all sorts. I mean, you could talk
Well, we're seeing a lot of people acting upon ideas now that have been germinating perhaps, and now it's, a catalyst. We talk about the catalyst often. And you mentioned on the Facebook Live we did a couple of weeks ago about the history lessons.
Right.
And actually in times of,
A couple of days ago, not a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, was it? Yeah, it's been a crazy week.
Wow, it's a bit like that, isn't it? And I did mention, if you missed it, it's really quite relevant because, these things these big catalysts, these big challenges have occurred in history and continue to occur. And I gave the example of the 1600s just because it was relevant for a presentation I'm doing where I'll be quoting Shakespeare. And it was interesting as I was thinking about it, Shakespeare himself was forced through a plague to retreat from London, where the theatres were all closed in the early 1600s, moved back to Stratford and wrote two of my favourite plays, Antony and Cleopatra and Macbeth.
Mm-hmm.
And so he took the time and said, well, I can't perform. What do I do is I build future capacity, in his case IP, and wrote two absolutely brilliant pieces of work, which then went on. So in reality, they are ideas that perhaps wouldn't have come out of the fact if he was continuing to perform. So every time something changes, there's an opportunity to, and Daniel Priestley did a great podcast the other day saying there's an opportunity to reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
And this is what we must do.
Time to reset.
Reset, reinvent, and they're definitely his words, but I would say pressing reset is normal at a time like this, but I would say it's about taking stock. So if we take stock of our pillars, we'd say, what do we want to do with our home, if anything? Pay down our mortgage. Maybe think about an offset mortgage so you've got more money available if an opportunity comes along. Do you do something in the home to increase your personal capacity by, we've just done a lot of work in our home so our kids can work from home, so bigger desks, more laptops, all of that, all the right technology for them to do their work and increasingly me as well. And so what could you do there and get that working well? And also, could you build something? I think Mark Stokes has built a log cabin in the back at the bottom of the garden again to create that capacity in the home. Now, if he didn't choose to work from home, what he could do is rent that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you can always generate something from home. So I don't know if there's anybody got a question on the home side. If not, I can dive into the others, Chris.
Yeah, I know. I think if there's any questions there around home capacity, put them in the comments, please. Second pillar is pensions. We've talked about in specie. Is there anything at the moment? People worrying, people wondering what they should be doing. Look,
you've got to take stock of your pensions and don't forget the lost pensions. I spoke to a lady the other day who'd been married twice. And not that that's a problem, Chris, but when she was married twice, she had, a maiden name and another married name, and she kind of lost control of her pension. So, you just got to find these things. So you reconnect and you refine money, which is real money, repatriate it to where it belongs, and then make it work. So that's one. The other one is to take your time to explore the difference between the pension that's, the traditional, the stock market pension, where there's a hell of a lot of charges. So do your debits, for example, for those who are familiar with debits, or if they're not, they could find a link to that.
Actually, I posted a video in this very group this morning for debits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is a really important thing to do once a year. And if you didn't do it, and some of our members didn't do it, or did some of it, only a few, right? Fine. So that's me having a poke. But if they're not people who are not members, then they could do their debits, right? Whether they're members or not, they could still take time to reflect and do something about things in their house that they don't need, costs that they don't need, people they're paying that they shouldn't be paying, insurance they've got they shouldn't be having. By the way, check your travel insurance. I had my Alaskan cruise, which was set up for June this year. The government of Canada have said nobody's cruising until July. That's all gone now. So you just make sure you've got all the insurance in place. And if you're a business owner, look at that relevant life insurance, which is often 50% cheaper because you put it through your business and not personally. Mm. These things are not often known, And business owners, generally entrepreneurs and people who are busy, the reason they don't do these things, Chris, is time. So this has given us an opportunity to reclaim a little bit of our own time, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So I go back to some of the key principles of wealth building, setting the foundation right, and taking care of your roof, making sure you've done your wills, your powers of attorney, shareholder agreement if you haven't been doing that. Many, many things in the roof. But in everything, even just take a little bit of time and say, that's what I'm going to do, is spend 1 hour doing as much as you can do on that. And just creating a bit of box time so you do it, and then consistently you can measure activity in wealth building. If right now you're not going to be making great strides in measuring an increase in your recurring income, you can be measuring activity and starting to record what you're doing and setting review dates for the next month.
And I think some of the comments we've had over the last few days from our members is that whilst obviously no one could have expected and planned for this, having a plan that has got 5 years, 10 years to it, which they've obviously been working with us on over the last 10 months or so, at least provides some certainty. So when you don't deviate from the longer term vision of your wealth.
Yeah, I mean, look, have you ever... We talked about the wealth builder principles and the 7 steps to wealth almost being a bit like a sat-nav system, right? It's a system you can follow. But any sat-nav system can send you down the wrong way, can't it? You know, I've been there myself when I've gone to a golf course that I don't really know where I'm going. You follow the sat-nav and you find yourself down a road which is about this thick and you can't get your car down it, you know. So that happens. And all you've got to do is reverse. And then you have to plan it. And of course, if you're like me, I don't have maps in my car anymore. You know, you've got to go back out, haven't you, and see where you are, and then you zero back in again. So it's the time to take the helicopter view and go back out again and see what your plan is, reconnect with your plan, and to know that if you do the right things, you will get to a place in 5 to 7 years, 7 to 10 years, worst case, being completely financially independent, and nothing can damage that ever again. And that's the reality, you know. So just don't worry about it. It doesn't matter if your plan goes back a bit, because all it's done is it's taken you back a little bit, but your mind has improved, your time has improved. Maybe forever you're no longer having to go in work. Remember, I think, was it Adnan who negotiated? Who was it who negotiated? Kuldip, right. Mm-hmm. So Kuldip negotiated kind of work 4 days, right? Yeah. So now you don't need to negotiate. Mm. Yeah, your employer is saying to you, go work from home. Mm-hmm. You know, A, you have to, but B, you can say, you know, that working from home thing, I quite like that. Yeah. So you've got an opportunity to almost renegotiate now, in readiness for when this does finally clear up, that you can work from home because you've enjoyed it, you've done good work. So do good work, you know. If you've got a job, do great work, so that your managing team and your bosses say, well, yeah, you were great at doing that from home, carry on doing it. Yeah. And it gives you more flexibility to build your wealth.
To say a few more hellos to people that have jumped on. Hello, Brendan. Good to see you here. Catherine, hello. Paul Lewis, hello. Dami, hello. Michelle Kemp, hello to you. And Chris Henry and Steve Hall, hello. So, Steve, you've got a question about property, but before that, let's cover off the investment pillar with one question that Matthew has asked here. So Matt's saying, what's your outlook on moving stock market investments at this time to more tangible assets or currencies such as property, gold and silver?
Okay. Well, I think I've answered some of that in the previous point, but I'll make this point. You know, currently, whatever you're holding, everything is being depressed. And unless you've got something dramatically different that's going to work differently to where your stock market's working, then there's no point changing anything until the opportunity comes up. We talked about in specie, but that's really more about moving things into a SSAS than anything else. So if you're holding money in ISAs or you're holding money in stocks, then just almost go back and have a look at your valuations, because you'll be getting valuations regularly. So go back and say, because everything's about judging almost a frame of reference, right? So if you look back I don't know, 5 years, when you go back and look at your statements, what was your valuation then? And say you had 100 grand, and right now you that increased to 120, but now it's gone back to 110. You're still better than you were before. So it's just like understanding where are you, and then create a new plan. So if you are where you are, you press reset, you rebase your plan, say, well, I've got 100 grand now, and I don't have another plan to invest in any of the other entrepreneurial pillars right now. Just take that one and say, well, what would I do? Well, I would start changing the way that I would work with my stock market investments moving forward. And I think there are 3 ways you can do that. Way number 1 is to almost imagine then that what you want to do is to see your money increasing and locking in gains. So you don't just ride a roller coaster and then you get on the same roller coaster and it goes again, because you haven't learned anything. So there's a process I teach called, sorry, it's a bit of a mouthful, bank, counter correlate. Right, I'll say again. Bank means, so you've got 100 grand, let's say it recovers, which it will do. You get to 120. You bank 10, and then you put it into work to do something else. So Matt mentioned gold or whatever, right? So gold is not an asset because it doesn't provide cash flow, but it is a hedge. So you could bank the 10, lock it into gold. So you've secured some of the money, so you've staircased your money. So if the market falls, you're not in that position again. You've still got some of that money locked in to something else which doesn't work in the same way as the stock market. So counter correlation means everything works in the same way. Counter correlation means it works in opposite way, like ice creams and umbrellas, for example. That would be really simple. So I would think about that and start creating a set of rules. So, for example, if I'm dealing with somebody who's got, or go back to SSAS again because that's very common, they've got a 500,000 SSAS. I'll say, well, okay, we need to create a set of rules, and I'll make a simple rule now. Let's say we chunk that back. So 500,000 is 10 lots of 50 grand. So you make 10 decisions, and you'll never have more than 50 grand in one thing unless it gives you an outstanding return, and you benchmark that against the risk that you're willing to take. Easy? 10%? Do the same thing. So just start looking at your stocks now, chunk it down and say, when it gets to a certain level, obviously you can reassess what you've got now, which is another option, which is to say, well, look, I used to have my money in, somebody designed that for you, either you bought it from an advisor or you got it through an employer, or you put it together somehow, reset what that looks like. So you don't have to just simply hold what you've got. You can shift it so it's already different now. You could shift the principle from, if you've got high charges, shift it to low cost trackers or ETFs. So you're still in the market, but you're just changing the costs moving forward. So the second point is change your cost base. So the only thing you can control at a time like this, because you can't control the market, never can, is your cost base. So find ways to drive your cost base down so that when you do pick up, or if it does go down, you're not compounding the loss in the stock market with the loss of fees. So if you can, reassess whether you need guidance or not, reassess the difference between trackers and ETFs compared to more expensive funds. Or again, the other thing, which is in that point number 1 I made about kind of creating a set of rules that you can protect your money. There's also, if you get control of it, you can introduce the concept of stop losses. So stop losses is where you kind of say, when it gets to a certain level, I lock in the value. So if the market falls, you haven't lost any money. Or you set the stop loss slightly below where you are. So if the market tanks, you only lose a little. And you can create stop losses when you're in control of the funds. You can't create stop losses if you've got the money in a fund that somebody else owns and controls on your behalf. So get control of your money. Then you can build a risk mitigation in so you don't let this happen again. And the third thing you can do, so other than bank account correlate, build in stop losses, reassess your charges and the cost of doing business in the stock market, is you could change the way you build your stock market portfolio so it's a reflection of who you are. So you don't have to go with some sort of broad spectrum of the market. You could choose to hold whatever you want to hold as a proportion of your total wealth in the market, and then choose how you want to hold that. So, I have a very particular way that reflects my personality of the money I have in the market. So I do invest in the market, but I invest in a very particular way that's private to me, and only people who give me a glass of red do I share that when we're talking, right? So not on camera. But there are many ways you can do that. So if you've got a real strong view about impact in the world, if you've got a real strong view about green or ethical, or you want, there's something that is a reflection of your personality and your views, then you can design your investments to reflect that. So take stock of who you are, make a decision around that.
Yep.
3 ways you could do that.
Yeah, Matthew's just replied back saying, thanks so much. I agree with this strategy completely. My concern is so many pension holders do not hedge their bets in the stock market by locking out their positions or setting stop losses. There's also mainstream lack of awareness for where their money is sitting due to a delegation of responsibility to fee-based
advisors.
There we go. So
I won't go in that soapbox today.
We've been there before. Yeah. So Matt, thanks so much for your question there. Really appreciate that.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I think Paul Lewis is on, right?
Yes.
So he's online. I think he was stuck in France.
He's in lockdown already.
Yeah. So he's in lockdown. So good luck, Paul, with, I don't know what it's like where you are, but I hope you've got a nice environment, plenty of food, and you can still get out on the slopes because at least you're not bumping in. He's not going to bump into people.
No, he'll be dodging them.
Right? Yeah. He'll be dodging them.
And of course, like for everybody, either watching now and families, first and foremost, hope that you're all okay and not affected directly by the virus.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hopefully you get home safely and sometime soon. And we know a number of our clients are stuck in different countries, and that must be a terrible place to be, really, notwithstanding the joke about skiing. So I wasn't making light of anybody's situation. But, Paul's a good guy, and he'll be smiling as I talk about them.
Yeah. Okay. So, Steve, well, I guess property is the next.
That's a biggie.
And we've got lots of our members in property, and we've seen, of course, there's a 3-month kind of break in the mortgage payments, which will help to some degree. But we've got tenants asking their landlords
for breaks as well. Yeah.
So how?
Well, look, you're going to have. Remember, I said to you, there's ethical people and there's unethical people. So you will have some tenants who are genuinely affected by the coronavirus and what their employer or their business is doing. And I think it's appropriate, if you're a landlord, to do your best to help people, because in the end, if they don't pay, it's a long old job to evict anybody from property, and it costs money. So in any event, you have to help people. That's the key thing. But there'll be people take advantage of that, won't they? And they'll say, well, I want a break. Okay. And that's a more difficult one. So again, I would probably be wanting to get evidence from tenants, what is the situation for you, and show it to me on some kind of an email audit trail, and then do your best to help people who can prove it, and just, put up with the fact that some people are going to try and take advantage of the situation. Yeah. The other thing to do is just think about this again, as you turn the wheel on your property portfolio, there are always different tenant types, aren't there? So we've got blue collar tenants and some clients, others are students, others are young professional, service accommodation, hotels, care homes, all sorts of different things. Maybe think about looking, as you reset, for tenants that have got a different cross-section for you. So you don't have the same tenant type in every property as if property is the way you're building your portfolio and building your wealth. Because one of anything is dangerous. Mm-hmm. One tenant type, one strategy, one asset, one pillar is dangerous, because as we can see, these things can be devastating if you're doing that, which is the reason why most businesses and most business owners struggle, is they've got one business, not multiple businesses. And the key to success is have multiple businesses, multiple streams of recurring income, and different exposures to different types of customer and different types in property in terms of different types of tenant. Does that answer the question about I know it's not easy. You can't just shift that. You just have to deal with the stuff that's going to happen.
Well, Steve's asking, thoughts on the market. I mean, undoubtedly the market's going to change in some shape or form, but we just really don't know sort of how long this will all go on for.
Well, I think my thoughts in general is while there'll be people in pain, there'll be opportunities down the line, because some people who will be in pain now don't want to be in pain ever again. Older landlords, tired landlords, maybe people who are just about making a living in their B&B or their small hotel, and they don't really want to do that anymore. There will be opportunities, and just so you know, I'll be creating a group of people who've got, let's say, well-funded, intelligent people like me and others, who would get together and not to prosper from other people's frustration, but to genuinely try and help people if they've got a situation where they want out. Then if there's a good opportunity, there's an opportunity to buy. So I'll be looking at that, and others will be looking at that. And those who want to look at that with us, again, the other thing to do at a time like this is reflect on who you know and who you've got relationships with, because the thing which kind of is an overlay of all of the different pillars is the strength of leverage of relationship. So talking now is a help, I hope, for somebody. But the other point is it's who you know and what you know, and can help you not just overcome adversity, but to seek and find opportunities and take advantage of those opportunities. So we want to help people who are struggling, but we also want to help people who see opportunities and help them deliver on those. And they won't be immediately obvious, but they will come. And when they come, we need to be poised and ready for that, which is the reason why I'm saying, for those of you who've got money in the stock market, even if you sit on it, keep looking for the opportunities, so that when the opportunities come, you can move towards those opportunities. And that's all we can do in a time like this, is reset where we are, take stock of where we are, but keep looking forward for the opportunities, and making sure that as we look for those opportunities, they're diversifying ourselves and our wealth away from just one single strategy.
Steve's commented back, actually, just a point maybe to share, that perhaps some people are not realising that with the mortgage breaks, that they're not free. Payment of the mortgage can be delayed, but there's an interest that will accrue there, and so maybe worth mentioning that to the tenants so that they understand as well. David Johns actually has just shared that he's had some of his tenants ask for a 3-month deferred rent, and they'll repay it over the following 6 months. And they say they cannot apply for the grants as they are not classed as a small business. So he's thinking he could offer half the rent for the 3 months. So at least he's got some income coming in over that period.
Well, this is going to stretch the imagination, the negotiation power, and the clarity of thought for everybody. And David and I spoke just the other day, and he mentioned this to me. And it's difficult because you don't know how many of those people are genuinely affected and how many are looking just to take advantage of David's potential generosity. So I think it's about asking for proof and making them jump through a few hoops if you can. And if in the end somebody won't pay, the worst place for any landlord to be in is to have no rent. Just like the worst place for any business to be is to have no customers. So while it's definitely not worth, thinking about businesses, we'll get into business, I guess, but we definitely don't want to be discounting our way. But in some respects, I understand the need for cash flow, and you don't want to be in a position where nobody pays, you don't pay, and you end up losing your property. So it's a difficult one, and I know that. So, but the perspective I'm giving is just keep thinking about the balancing act of both sides. Deal with stuff you've got to deal with, but keep thinking about that there are opportunities, and even if you're not ready for the opportunities yet, there are other people who are, and then maybe you can profit from an opportunity by making it available to somebody else. It's always about connection and leverage of all kinds. And if you can find an opportunity, profit from the opportunity, and it puts a few thousand in your bank account, then that could be, buffer zone for the future. And I would encourage everybody to create a substantial buffer wherever they have it, so that if we ever get into this situation again, they've got that comfort while they're building their wealth, if they don't have those multiple streams of recurring income now, they're just trying to build them, is wherever you can, build a bit of a buffer so that you're covered for whatever period of time is important to you, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, whatever it would be, so that your life is still okay, irrespective of you feel the pain, but you won't be devastated.
Mm-hmm. Say hello to a few new people that have jumped on. Lau De Silva, hello. Pete Boxon, hello. Marty, good afternoon to you as well.
Okay.
Rupert, one of our founder members, just commented, as a landlord, this is a time to start thinking creatively and actually, how can you help your tenants if they genuinely are suffering and struggling at the moment? And just that communication element, just communicate, understand, from each side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so business, there's no doubt we're not underestimating the situation that's going on out there. It's incredibly difficult for so many people, and it potentially is going to get a lot worse.
Yeah.
It's time to really get lean, isn't it, if you're a business owner, as much as possible?
Well, I think there's something to be said about being lean, but it's difficult to be lean if you're not lean already, right? So if you've already got substantial overheads and you're in a position where you have to meet overhead, understandably, businesses are going to do everything in their power to maintain some kind of flow of money into their business to keep their business alive. And I think for many people, it's survival is the only thing that's on their mind for the next period of time. However, if you have the opportunity to stay lean and where you can be flexible, you could work from home instead of working from an office, you can cut down your costs, you can think about things. But the thing to keep in mind with business is twofold. One is, business is a way of building wealth, but it only builds wealth if you're creating recurring income sources. It's not a way of building wealth if you're just trading time for money, but in a different vehicle. And this is a big challenge that most business owners in the UK, and there's around 5.5 million business owners, Chris, and the vast majority of them are simply trading time for money, but in a vehicle that takes their life away in many cases, and they're not meeting payroll, they're not balancing their time and life balance, and they're creating challenges for themselves. And look, and I understand that. But right now they're in survival mode. But if you're in business or thinking of going into business, it's still a wonderful opportunity if you can find ways to, create value for people that they will pay for on a recurring basis. And that's the skill. That's the real skill, because it serves you twice. One, it serves you because you've got money coming in to meet payroll, to meet your overheads as you grow that business. Then, and secondly, and of course, it makes you feel safer. And secondly, it gives you an incredible value to the business, because the minute most business valuations have gone down massively, because all business acquirers are looking at business through a lens of risk. And the way that you obviate that risk in a business is to have two things, on your agenda. So think about these two things at every stage if you're thinking about creating a business as part of your wealth building activity. One is to create an enterprise, not a business, which means a business that works without you. And Chris Henry will speak loudly of that as an action coach who his company purveys that logic very well, very ably. And secondly is to create streams of recurring income, so that if the business doesn't need you to be in it and you're creating income that doesn't depend on you doing the selling, the marketing, the shipping, the humping, all of the things businesses have to do. If you can do those two things, then the business can work without you. And if the business works without you and you can create a high level of predictability, that's what acquirers want. And the multiple achieved from acquirers of businesses, when there's a high level of recurring income and a low level of dependency on the business owner, can be 3, 4, or 5 times the multiple of a business that's simply trading activities for money. So think about that and take time to think about, if you're going to get into business, can you find ways to do those two things? That's the two key things you need to do. Everything else, is then, if you're in one, it's really, what else do you do? Is anybody asking a question specifically about being in business, Chris? Or
I'm not seeing a question at the moment, no. Reaching out to your clients as much as you can as well, and just, again, communication, finding out what they need, how you can help them, maybe in different ways as well.
I think certainly using technology to stay that, with that lean outlook and be able to reach out to people, because I suppose traditionally most people have done business face to face, okay? But the use of technology, GoToMeeting, Zoom, all sorts of different things. You can have much more meetings and you can create the new paradigm. I remember when we started using GoToMeeting, which was when I created the IFA in 2006, and we put on £100 million worth of value in terms of funds, but we didn't meet anybody. We did everything through GoToMeeting. So we said, the reason why we're using this technology is because it drives the cost down, because there's no point you paying me to be in my car to come and see you. So if I use this technology, it's going to drive better value for you. So what do you want me to do? Are you happy to come on? This was a long time ago, right? So are you happy for me to save you cost, or would you rather meet me in person and pay a higher price? And most people said, I'd rather use technology. And now everybody's using technology, Facebook and Facebook Live and all sorts of different ways of using technology. And that will only improve to be able to not just have meetings like this, but streaming much bigger meetings, so that, as you expand into the IP section, you've got many ways to get your IP out there. But speaking to your point, Chris, I think is a good one about being in business and having customers, is I saw Daniel Priestley do a great, I think it was a Facebook Live the other day, and I give him, complete credit for this thought, and I think it's absolutely right, is that when you get a spike of devastation like we have now, and if you imagine, I'm trying to get the camera right, you've got a spike of activity which is causing everybody panic and worry. They're going to go one side or the other side of that. On the one side, they're going to run for the hills because they're dealing with shit, and they have to clean it up. And you can't chase them. You have to let them go do it. There's nothing you can do. You must not discount your way to try and get them back. You can't have a conversation with somebody meaningfully when they're in real difficulty. But there are many people, and definitely I found that even in the last 2 weeks, that people who were kind of maybe thinking about mentoring, they're thinking about their wealth, have seen what's happened and said, I'm never going to let this happen again. I need that guidance. I need that mentorship now, and they're willing to pay, a premium price for it, because they can see the real value that will be added to them in the long term. And so we're having a few people on SSAS deferring because of the stock market, and they want to keep their powder dry, and I understand that. But we're having an uptake in the mentoring because people want that solution. So think about those people who will value you more highly, who fall on one side, and look for those rather than those people who fall on the other side, who will be just running to take care of the mess that they've unfortunately found themselves in because of the way this is impacting on their business. And that's really all you can do, and as well as let people know, as we do, and I'm so pleased there's a spirit of community being blossoming out of the weeds of this sort of profiteering that I hate to see. And I'm seeing more and more good stuff happening, is just make more phone calls to build Stephen Covey's point, which is the emotional bank account, is let people know that you absolutely care. And it's not about profiteering yourself or promoting yourself. You're just saying, how are you getting on? How are you affected by this? Can we do anything to help you at all? And I allocate some time every week to be able to make some of those calls. And I've stepped that up in recent days, and maybe some people on this have either seen a text from me, have had a call from me, but I've been making a lot of calls just to let people know we're here. And if they're thinking something, but they're not coming on meetings like this, they're not sharing their thoughts, they're kind of self-isolating their thoughts, Chris. We want to try and get them to share those thoughts.
Yeah. And if we can help with any of the online tools, I've been running online business for 5 years, and you've just mentioned the use of GoToWebinar, GoToMeeting as just one of those tools, but project management, communication, any of those things now, if you've been thrown into suddenly a very different pattern of working and you're not quite sure what the best way is of keeping in touch and keeping on top of everything, and if we can help and share some of the things that we've been using, then be happy to do that. And of course, in the community, if anyone else has got any tools, please do share that. So moving through, we thought we might do 20 minutes here, but I can see it's 50 minutes on the clock already.
Wow.
But people are still watching. Thank you. Wow. So, we hope that
let's
this has been helpful.
An hour. So IP, should we do?
IP. So, it's really a story, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, take a leaf out of old Shakespeare's book, and if you've got some more time than you had before, think about now starting to capitalize on that and start to capture your own IP. And how you do that, there's probably 3 different ways you could do that. One is just take stock of where you add value, and if you haven't done it for a little while, work out where your best value is added to the world, and that's often not evidenced in your own head, but by other people telling you you're outstanding at doing things. You're really great at this, or people comment on this or that, and that you've got a real sense as you stop and think about where your true value is. Reconnect with your wealth dynamic. Try and have a look at where your path of least resistance would be. And if you didn't do your wealth dynamic, go back and do it. And if you haven't done that, Google wealth dynamics and do your wealth dynamic test. The other thing you could do is begin to think about recognizing, and this is a really exciting one, to reconnect with your reason why, and almost imagine that you've got the pillars, but overarching all of those pillars, going back with that helicopter view, is your wealth plan. And your wealth plan, think about giving it a name. We talked about what well-being is an example on a podcast. But whatever the name is, just think about the story of your wealth and what it's going to mean for the generations that will follow, that you are literally the pioneer. And pioneers put up with stuff, don't they? All pioneers put up with hardship. This is just one of those. But you're going to power through because the reason why is really strong. Reconnect with that reason why, and then start to think about that plan and document it in some kind of a journal that you're beginning to say, in 2020, remember the coronavirus, remember this, remember that, and you're documenting what you decided to do, so that when your kids and your grandkids, and talk about that, I'm going to be a granddad soon, aren't I? That's there. I did. When you have all of those things, then you're creating a story that will keep you going forward no matter what's going on, because you're documenting the lessons for your own family and for the people to follow. And I think that's a very laudable thing.
Yeah. Okay, so should we wrap it up with joint ventures, pillar number 7? So, not so easy to be out there networking at the moment. We're seeing lots of networking moving online. You don't want to be shaking too many people's hands at the moment.
No, I properly disinfected him before we sat down together today. And we haven't bumped anything at all. We should be 2 meters apart, but not going to happen today. Look, if I have to self-isolate, I don't mind if it was caused by you. But the issue with joint ventures is, joint ventures are really about collaboration and the power of more than one. And you don't have to necessarily have to be spending time face-to-face with people if you've got technology, but if you've also got the due diligence of the trust and the collaboration with other people that you trust. So, for example, many of our students and members with SSAS, for example, will say, look, I've got more money than I can deploy. I don't have enough connections to make this money work. Where can I go to get those connections? Well, they'll often come to me for that, because over the course of my too many years to count, I've built up an incredible source and sources of connection and collaboration, and some people on the call will testify to that. Certainly Chris Henry had an outstanding one, which we got right from day one. And, that circle of relationship that he had has led to them now doing joint ventures together. So you don't need many people to create wonderful joint ventures. You just need to be being in the process of being willing to engage people, to trust people, but still do the DD. And again, we can help with the DD. So it doesn't mean stopping your JVs, and you might not be going to networking meetings, and you might not be going to training courses to bump into people, but you can participate in things like this. You can participate in a wealth builder community. You can participate in the SSAS Alliance community. And you can talk to us if there's anybody that you're looking for, that you see an opportunity, but you just don't have the bandwidth yourself. So it's a combination of bandwidth, other people's contacts, and DD.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So thank you all for watching. I guess just to wrap it up, for those that maybe weren't here at the beginning, you've talked about your catalyst being back in 1985, obviously, with your your father, but then almost reignited 10, 12 years ago in 2008 by the downturn. And, sometimes people need a catalyst.
And sometimes more than one that keeps you going, a bit like a booster, So unfortunately, my dad died very young, but he was a business owner, but didn't act like a business owner in the sense that he didn't have streams of recurring income. He didn't protect his family. He didn't have a will. He didn't do some things that people should do. Really, why? Because he didn't have time. And this is the big thing, I think, more than anything else. This current situation should afford us more time, and use the time wisely to take stock of what you're doing, reconnect with your reason why, plan your strategy with your pillars. Don't get caught up with just repeating the same pillars if your current pillars are affected by what's happening. If whatever pillar you're in, diversify within the pillar, which you can do because there are multiple pillars. Don't get overwhelmed, because you can always come back and talk and share with a coach, a guide, a mentor, whatever, or just with each other in the community. So I would just keep doing that and use the time that you've got now to reinvent yourself for the next phase, and never, ever, please, never let this sort of thing damage you financially. We can keep ourselves safe as far as we can physically, but financially we have to do it for ourselves.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget that we are constantly updating our resources inside the WealthBuilders membership site to help you create, build and protect your wealth. Head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership right now for free access. That's wealthbuilders.co.uk